Hello everybody. Welcome back. This is Professor West, and today we will be using the MIT App Inventor to create the old coin grabber game. The coin grabber game is very simple. As you see here in the emulator, you just move around, grab the coins, and it keeps track of how many coins you grab in the label. And when you get them all, a little window pops up that says Game Over. You've collected all the coins, and when you cancel it, it'll start over. Okay, so today let's go ahead and start a new project. And I'm just going to call it Coin Grabber. Remember, you cannot have spaces in the names. And I don't know, I'm on like 5 or 6 or something, whatever. Okay. So, this is a very easy game to set up. We're going to start by adding a horizontal arrangement. So come down to the layout and grab a horizontal arrangement and just put it right onto the screen. And underneath that, we're going to come down to drawings and animation, and we're going to add a canvas. Remember, anytime you have a picture, you have to have it on a canvas. So pictures cannot be on here without being on a canvas. A canvas is just a little area that pictures have to live on. Okay. First, let's go back to the horizontal arrangement, and we're going to set the width to fill parent. And all that means is it's going to go all the way across the screen. We don't care about the height. The height will automatically adjust to whatever's in it, and we just want to leave it like that. So let's go ahead and go to the user interface, and we're just going to drag 2 labels right into it. And notice that it shrank to fit those, except for the fact that we told it to go all the way across the screen. In the first label, I'm just going to come over here in the text box, and I'm going to say something like coins grabbed. And then the second label is going to tell us how many coins have been grabbed. So for now, we're going to set this to 0 for the text, and we're just going to leave it like that, because in the code we'll make it fix it. So next, let's go ahead, and while we've got that label clicked on, let's rename it. And I'm going to call it something like LBL coins or something like that. LBL score, whatever. Next, I'm going to come back to the canvas. You can click on it over here, or you can click on it here in the components. And I'm just going to tell it the height is fill parent and the width is fill parent. And that means that it's going to be as tall as whatever's left on the screen and as wide as whatever's left on the screen. Okay. And remember when I told you that you have to have a canvas in order to put a picture on there? Well, now it's time to put the picture. So we're going to go to Drawing and Animation. We're going to grab an image sprite and just stick it somewhere up here towards the left. Just anywhere up there towards the left. And then we're going to go over to Picture, and we're going to tell it what picture is going to be there. Now, this can be anything. It doesn't matter what picture you use. I have a picture that came with the MIT App Inventor website posted that has a little guy. I'm just going to use that. So I'm going to go to the Coin Grabber game. They like to share pictures so that you can use them. And mine is huge. That's okay. If your picture's really, really big, it's fine. If you look on the emulator, it's not quite as big as it's appearing over here, but it's still pretty big. That's okay. We're going to go to the height, and we're going to tell it to be something like 60 pixels. And we're going to do the same for the width until it's 60. And that should make it about that size, which is a pretty good size for our little game that we're going to play. Okay, all we have left now is to add some balls. So for now, we're just going to grab a ball and drag it onto the screen, and grab another ball and drag it onto, doesn't matter where, because we're going to have them automatically, randomly come up later. But let's put 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. In the code, we're going to tell them to come up randomly, but this is going to be the coins that we're going to get. So let's go ahead and set the color to be something coin colored, like orange. You know what? Forget that. We'll do that in the code. So if you change a couple, that's fine, and if not, that's fine too. Okay. So next, now that we have 10 on here, we have a choice. We can either leave them the size that they are, or we can make them bigger, or whatever. This is also a good place to let you know that you could change it. You don't have to have balls. You could have more image sprites and put pictures of actual coins or whatever you want your person to collect. Fruit, pets, whatever. So this is just called Coin Grabber because we use that as an example. The last thing that we're going to need is a notifier. So let's go to User Interface. About halfway down, you see this one that says Notifier. We're just going to drag it onto the screen. You're not going to see it on the screen. It's going to be down below it in the visible or in the non-visible components. And that just means that when the app's running, the person's not going to see it. All of these items stayed on the screen because the person that's playing is going to see it. So that's it as far as setup. We can now go to the blocks and start making our game. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to have a variable that keeps track of how many of the coins we've collected on the screen. So let's come to variables and do initialize a global variable, and we can click on it and change the name. And I'm going to call this coins collected. Remember that you cannot have a space in the name. So I just did it as all one word. And whenever you do run words together, which we do a lot in programming, it helps if you capitalize each word. So that makes it a little easier to see that it's coins collected versus if it was all lowercase. And we're going to come over to math and we're going to say 0 because right off the bat we've collected 0 coins. So the next thing we need to do is we need to tell it that we can drag this little guy on the screen, because by default we can't do that. So we're going to come back over here to our image sprite, and we are going to find the one that says dot dragged, and we're going to put that on here. And we're going to go back to image sprite now, and we're going to find the purple one that has move to. So the fourth purple one says move to. We're going to plug that in. And by default, notice that there's an X and a Y. So what we're telling it now is, as we drag across the screen, across our character, this one's telling it that it's going to move the character to where we're dragging. And to use them, to do them, we're going to use the current X and the current Y. And remember from the previous videos, I told you that X goes across the screen like this. It starts at 1 and goes across the screen until it gets to about 500. So if X is 400, then it's going to be about this far across the screen. Y does the same thing, but it starts at the top of the canvas, because that's what we're using, and goes down. So 1 down to probably, I don't know, about 480 or 490, something like that. So to use this, we don't have to know exactly where it's at. We're just going to tell it current, and we're going to say get the current, and that's going to see where our finger's at as it's moving. We're going to do the same thing for Y. So when we click on our guy and start dragging, it's going to keep saying, okay, what's the current XY? And it's going to move him to that. So he'll be moving with us as we move our fingers. So the next thing we want to do is set it up so that something happens when our little character collides with anything, which, since there's only coins on the screen, all we have to do is tell it anytime we collide with anything, something's going to happen. So we'll come over to our image sprite, that's our picture of our guy, and we'll find the one that says collided with. It's the very top one. So when our character collides with something, we know it's a coin, so what are we going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is add 1 to how many coins we've collided with. So we're going to come up to our variable, and we're going to point to the name, and we're going to use set, because we're going to tell it that there's a new score. Get is for asking. Get is for asking what is the score, which we're going to use in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it over here. And set is for telling it that there is a new score. So we're going to need a math function with a plus sign on it. And I already got this global get coins. If you didn't, just come up here, point to it, and get this one. And then we're going to add a number to it. Each coin is worth 1. So now this little box says whatever the current number collected is. So if you've already collected 4, then it's going to be 4 plus 1, which is 5. And it's going to set that to be the new variable number. So every time we collide with one, we're going to get the total, add 1 to it, and make that our new total. The next thing we need to do is tell our label. Right here, we've got coins grabbed in a 0. Well, if it's 1 now, we need to tell it to be a 1. So to do so, we're going to come over to our label coins, our LBL coins, and we're going to get the one that says text. Remember, these are all in alphabetical order by the last item here. So we're going to come down and get the one that says set LBL coins text. And we're going to plug that in. And what are we going to set the number to? Well, we're going to set it to whatever our current collected coins is. So we're going to come back up here and get this, use this get one. So in this line, it adds 1 to it and assigns that to be the total. And then in this line, it goes and gets that total. So if it's 7 now, it goes and gets 7 and assigns it to the label. And what else do we need to do? When we drag our guy over here and he hits this ball, right now we've set it up to add 1 to the ball and to add 1 to our score. I'm sorry, add 1 to our score and add 1 to the label. But we also want to make the ball invisible. So we're going to come back over here, and now here's where it gets a little different. Until now, if they ran into ball number 1, we would have told it, hey, do this when you run into ball number 1. But now we don't know which ball we've ran into, or which coin. All we know is that we ran into one of them. So we got to come down to these where it says any component. These are general components. Click the plus sign. These are general components. And this says any ball. So I'm going to click on that. And I am going to come over to where it says visible. Set ball.visible. And I'm going to grab that one. So this is telling it when I collide with any ball, set that ball to invisible. To do that, we need to tell it first what we collided with. And that's right here in this local variable. So we're just going to use get other and stick it in. That's the component that we collided with. So if I collided with a brick, right here it would say brick. Or well, it wouldn't say it, but it would know that it's a brick. If I collided with a tennis ball or whatever I'm colliding with, it's going to know what it is so that I can do something to it. So now I'm going to come back up to logic, and I'm going to get a false, and I'm going to plug it in. So when I collide with something, I'm going to take that ball, whichever ball it was, and the visible is going to be set to false, which means that it's just going to disappear from the screen. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my control statements, and I'm going to grab this very top one that says if then. An if then statement is very, very simple, but it's also extremely powerful. I'm just going to stick it in right here. It has a condition and then a response. If this condition is true, then do this. So if you think about in our daily tasks, if the printer ink is low, then replace the printer ink. It's very simple. That's exactly what we're going to do here. So we're going to set up our condition to test. In order to test a condition, we have to come over to math and get this one that says equal sign. And I don't like to put the in yet. I like to put them over here and make them first. You could go ahead and put it in. So what are we going to do? Well, if we're going to come over here to where it says our variable, coins collected, we're going to get the coins collected. And how many coins are there? Well, there's 10 coins. Okay, let's go to math. We'll get a number and plug it in, and we're going to make that 10. So every time we collide with something, it's going to add 1 to the coins, set that one to invisible, and then it's going to come down and see if we've reached our 10th one. Because if we've reached the 10th one, then we've won the game and it's over. And I'm just going to plug that right in. So, I just told you what's going to happen. If we've reached our 10th one, then we're going to notify the person playing the game. And to do so, we're going to come right here under all these balls to this notifier. Don't go down to the bottom one that says any notifier. Come to the one that we put on. I'm going to close this just because it can be confusing. Use the one that says notifier 1 and click on it. And we want the one that says show message dialog and then has a bunch of stuff here. That's the one we want. And we're just going to drag it in and stick it right here in our then statement. Okay. Next, we're going to come over to text and we're going to get the very top one. And we're going to drag it over here. This is a blank text box that lets us do anything we want. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to hit Control-C because I'm on a Windows computer, and Control-C is copy on Windows. Control-V, 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 and made 4 of them. If you're on a Mac, then you have to do, I think it's the Mac button plus something, but I don't use Macs enough to be able to tell you. You just have to do it. If you don't know how to do it, you can always just right click on it and tell it duplicate, and it'll make one like that. Let me delete this one since I just did an extra one. Okay, so in our game, we're going to have a message come up. What do we want our message to say? We want it to say something like, you have collected all of the coins. Why not? And then we want our title. This will be at the very top of the box. We're just going to say something generic like alert. And we don't even have to put any text for the buttons because we don't need buttons. We're just going to leave it say cancelable is true. And when I did my demonstration a while ago, this came up with the box at the end when I won, and it had alert across the top of the box, and then you have collected all the coins, and then a button for me to cancel. And when I click the cancel button, it should start a new one. Okay. So, the next thing we have to do is actually create what happens when a new game starts. Now, this will be our most complicated one. I'm going to move over to the right and scroll back up, and so I have a little extra room here. So the first thing we're going to do for this is we're going to create a procedure, and we're just going to choose the top one here, and we're going to move it onto our screen. And we're going to call this new game, all one word, N-E-W-G-A-M-E. In a minute, we're going to call this from some different places, and it's going to reset everything for us. So, when we start, the first thing we're going to do, it's going to make our little guy where he's no longer enabled. And I'll tell you why in just a second, but let's go ahead and do it. Go to Image Sprite, go down to the green section, and find the one that says Enabled. Image Sprite 1. Oh, the very top one. Set Enabled, and I guess it's the second one. And he's no longer going to be enabled, so we're going to go to Logic and do a false. And just plug it in. So, now he is enabled. And the reason is because we're going to have all these balls pop up in random places, and we don't want one to pop up on him and immediately get taken before we move him and start counting them, because then we wouldn't have enough to get. We don't want something like that to happen. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize our variable for coins. Remember, we're going to use all of these, and we're going to create a list, and all of this is going to be in a list that's assigned to a variable. So we're going to go to variables, and we're going to get a noble initialize. Let me rephrase that. Let me get rid of that. We did not want that one. We want initialize a local variable. And the reason is this one over here that we created is a global variable. That means it can be used by any other part of the program at any time. But a local variable is local only to the method that it's, or the procedure that it's part of. So we don't want it to be accessed by everything. So we're just going to temporarily create this one for a few minutes in order to set our screen up. I'm going to rename this one coins. That way I can keep track of what all's there. And like this one, I initialized it to 0. Well, this one, I'm going to initialize it to a whole list. So come over here to lists and do make a list. And we're going to drag it on and we're going to stick it on here. Now here's the deal. Our balls, our 10 balls, we're going to have a list that represents each of these balls. But right now we only have 2 spots. So we need to add more spots. To do so, you point to the gear icon and click it, and this extra window comes up. And just like there's 2 spots here, there's 2 items here. So we need to drag 3, 4, 5 until we get 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now notice there's 10 here and there's 10 here. Okay, now we need to tell it what each of these items are. So we're going to come over to the ball, and we're going to scroll all the way down, and the very last one says ball 1. And I'm just going to drag it and stick it right in here. Now here's where it gets fun. We can use the same copy technique. We can either right click on it and duplicate it, or we can do Control C and do Control V a bunch of times and plug them all right there. Just plug them in. And it doesn't matter that they all say ball 1 for now. That's totally fine. Because we're about to change it. So, now that you have all these in, the first one's okay, that's ball 1. We're going to come to the second one, and we're just going to choose ball 2. Because the second one's ball 2, it's not ball 1. And then ball 3, ball 4, ball 5, and so forth until we get them all on there. 7, 8, 9, and 10. So what we've done now is we have created a list of these 10 that represent the 10 balls, and that's what's been initialized. So next, we're going to have it go into the first one and randomly do something, then go into the second one and randomly do something, and then go into the third one and randomly do something to put them all on the screen. And to do that, we need to create a loop. A loop is just a part of a program that repeats itself until it's done, basically. So we're going to come up to Control, and we are going to find the one that says for each in a list. For each item in list. So it's right here after the one with the 3 blue things on it. For each item in the list. And we're just going to drag that on and stick it in here. I'm going to rename this coin. And then I'm going to come up to the coins, and I'm going to tell it to get the coins. So it's going to come up. Remember, this one just creates a list and assigns it to this variable. So now I've come down and I've told it to get that list and apply it to this loop. So the first thing I need to do is I need to come back down, I need to come into the any components, and I need to point to the any ball, because I want this to happen no matter what ball we're talking about. And I need the one that says call ball.move2 for component. So it's right here, and it's got an X and a Y. Does everybody see that, I hope? We're just going to drag it right on and stick it in there. Now we have to tell it what we're working on, which we're working on the coin. So we're going to point to coin and use get coin and plug it in. Then we have to set up the command to randomly select the X and the Y variables. So remember from our previous games, X starts at the left and goes all the way to the right. So it's 1 over here and like 500 over here. So as it moves across the line, the X is getting higher. Y does the same thing but going down. So 1 is up here, 250, 100, 250, 7 or 400, 500 down here. As you're going down, the number gets bigger. So we need to set up 2 random checks to do this. So to do so, we're going to come to math, and we're going to come right here to this long one. And it says random integer from 1 to 100. Next, we're going to come back to math, and we're going to get the one with a minus sign. And we're going to just put it right here under it. Don't put it in for now. I like to create my variables as I'm going. I create all my procedures and stuff. I find that this is a lot easier than trying to make one big long thing. So what do we want to do first? First, what I want to do is I want to see how wide the screen is, because we don't know what phone they're playing on. They may be playing on a 3-inch screen. They may be playing on a 4-inch screen. They may be playing on an iPad or a tablet. So we need a command that's going to go through and count and see how wide that screen is. But we don't want to move it all the way. We don't want to start here. And I'll tell you why. If they were to choose, excuse me, if it was to randomly choose like 500 across, then our picture would start here. So this ball would start right here, and you'd never see it on the screen. So what we need to do is, we need to tell it that it can start anywhere up to the end of this screen, minus a little bit, so that the ball would start here and fill in the rest. So to do so, we're going to first get the width of the canvas, or of the screen rather. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and do the canvas. Why not? So we're going to come down to canvas, and we're looking for the width. It'll be one of the last ones, canvas 1.width. And we're going to grab that one, and we're going to plug it into this first part. And then, like I said, we just want to back it off a little bit from the edge. So we're going to go into math and get a number at the very top. And we're just going to say like 20. So now it can go all the way up to, if the canvas is 4 inches wide, it would go all the way up to 4 inches minus 20 pixels. That way the ball would have room to appear. And we're going to remove this 100. I'm just going to delete it. And we're going to plug this right into that calculation. So we're almost ready, but we have one more thing. Our little guy is going to start up here at the top left. So I don't want a ball to appear right here. So instead of telling it to start at 1, like it currently does, I'm going to tell it that the X should start at around 20, and that the Y should start at around 20. And that way, worst case scenario would be in this general area. So I'm going to change this to 20. And now this is going to set up my X, so it's going to see how wide the screen is, minus 20 pixels, and it's going to randomly pick a number anywhere from 20 to 20 less than the width of the screen. And I'm going to plug that into my X. Now we need to do the same thing for the Y variable, but we don't have to do all of this. We can simply right click on this one and duplicate it, and we can plug it right in. And the only things we need to change is we need to come over here where this says width and click the drop down and select height, because this one's going to start and go down to the height of the screen. And instead of 20, let's set it for 100, so there's a little more of a gap before the bottom of the screen. So it's going to loop through, it's going to pick one, or it's going to loop through, it's going to do this first ball, and it's going to put it anywhere on the screen. And then we're going to come back down into our any components, and we're going to click on the ball, and we're going to get the set visible component, which should be down here. Set ball dot visible. There we go. We're going to set the visible to true, so it'll be visible. To do so, we'll come up to logic and get a true. And it's going to be again of coin, so get coin and plug it in. So whichever, we're calling it coin, but it's really a ball in this. So whichever ball or coin we're using, we're going to randomly place it on the screen, and then we're going to take that same ball or coin and make it visible. Also, we're going to come in at the same time, and we're going to set the ball. Let's go back all the way down to the any ball, and we're going to set the ball paint color. So it's a green one, and we're going to set the paint color. We're going to plug it in, and it's going to be of the same component. So I'm just going to copy this one and duplicate it and plug it right in. And we're going to set the paint color to, and we're going to come up where it says colors, and we're going to choose one that we think looks like a coin. So maybe this orange one, or yellow, or whatever. And then last but not least, we're going to do one more thing. We're going to come back down to the any ball, and we're going to get the one that says radius. Set the ball radius. The radius is the size of the ball. In previous ones, when we used a ball, we would click on the ball and we would come over and we would change the radius. So if I chose it to be 20, now it would be this big. And we're not going to use 20, of course, but we're going to use the same get coin. So I'm going to copy that one and put it here. And we're going to use a number here and plug it in. And we're going to say like maybe 10. So all the balls, so as it goes through, it's going to go through ball 1, and it's going to randomly place it on the screen, make it visible, make the color this, and then set the radius to 10. That's a lot of stuff we're doing all at one time. But it's going to keep going. It's after it does ball 1, it's going to go back through because we told it to do it for all of the ones in coins, which is all 10 of these. So then it'll do it for ball 2. Then it'll do it for ball 3, ball 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And all 10 balls will be on our screen in random locations. They'll all be visible. They'll all have the same paint color, and they'll all have a radius of 10. So now we've only got a couple things left to do. Now we need to come and we need to get our sprite again. So get our image 1 sprite. We're going to come down to the purple section, and we're going to use the move to with an X and a Y. And we're going to stick this down here under the orange one, because we're done with all of this. This is finished. So we're going to make a whole new thing now. And to do so, we're going to tell it 0. We're going to duplicate that and put 0. And since it starts with 0 on this side going this way, and it starts with 0 on the top going down, what we've essentially just done is told it that every time we start a new screen, this guy is going to be as far to the left and up as he can be, as he can possibly be. So now, remember we started off, we set our sprite to enabled to false. Now I'm going to copy this because it's time to make it true. I'm just going to move it down. We want the enabled to be true now so he can play, because otherwise we won't be able to move it. And remember, this is whenever a screen, this is a new game. So what else do we want to do? Well, the next thing we want to do is set our score, our coins. We need to get a set for our global coins. And I'm going to duplicate the 0 and plug it in because we want to reset the score to 0. And the last thing we want to do is we want to tell it here that we've collected the 0. So we need to set our image for our label coin. So come over here, find the one that says set text, set label coins text to the global coins collected. So I'm going to come back up, and I'm going to use get global coins collected, and I'm going to bring it all the way down, and I'm just going to plug it right in there. So now our label is going to be whatever the coins collected is, which is going back to 0. Remember? We just changed it here to 0. And now we only have 2 little things left to do. So we're going to come over to the screen, and we're going to find the one that says Initialize. Initialize is what happens to a screen when it first starts. And we can put this anywhere. We have more room over here to the left because that was kind of a big one. So we're going to set our screen Initialize. And this whole function that we created is called newgame. So we're going to come over to the procedures, and we're going to call the newgame function. So whenever screen 1 initializes, it's going to call the newgame procedure, which is going to do all of this stuff that we just did. Setting up all the balls, putting them in the right places and everything. And that's almost everything. Right now, we could play this game. The only thing we couldn't do would be reset the game. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to come over. We're finally going to use this notifier. We're going to click on it, and we're going to say after choosing, and we're going to put it in here. So the notifier is just going to come up and give us the option, and we're just going to tell it to start a new game. And that's it. Let me pull up the emulator. Well, I was really hoping to get to demonstrate the game for you, but our emulator seems to be down today. They've been having some trouble with that apparently lately. I don't know if it's got something to do with storms or what, but apparently it's not wanting to let the emulator run. So, you'll just have to practice it yourself, and I apologize for that. Run it yourself. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and don't forget to watch the next video. Bye.